Good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Amata Balachandra. This is the 6:30 p.m. show that I do every single day. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is a show where I will pick up one topic with one guest and explain that topic to you. We also take in questions, so make sure you ask your questions in the chat window. The chat window is currently open. You can even use the super chat feature as well, as so your questions are highlighted. I'm going to get straight to the topic. Today, we're going to talk about the WHO report, and this is what the WHO report has now said. It's warned that 2.5 billion people, or that is 1 in 4 people, will be living with some degree of hearing loss by 2050. This is the most glaring gap in the health system, according to the WHO. Among low-income countries, they say that about 78% have fewer than 1 ear, nose, and throat specialists per million population. So not enough ENT specialists is what they're saying. They also say that 93% have fewer than one audiologist per million, and only 17% have one or more speech therapists per million. So today we're going to figure out what are the major problems when it comes to India per se. What is the gap that we need to be looking at, and what are the possible solutions? To talk about that, I have with me Devangi Dalal, who's an audiologist and speech language pathologist for the last 30 years. So she's been very kind enough to give us her time. So Ms. Dalal, thank you so much for joining us. My first question to you is this: how worrying is this data when you took a look at the report yourself? How worrying is it that 1 in 4 people could have some sort of hearing problems by 2050?
When you talk, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Of course, today it's a World Hearing Day, 3rd March. So, first of all, I would like to wish the audience who are listening us happy hearing. Greetings from my side, who is also a hearing health advocate for our country and also from the advocacy committee. Uh, of course, WHO has come out first time with its report, and as you know, 430 million people have a hearing impairment as of now, throughout the world. And 6.3% population is having hearing impairment, and they have seen that the more raise is going to happen in the middle and lower income countries. So this is very very important and very crucial issue. One is that in middle and low income countries, yet the neonatal screening has not become mandatory from the government. So there is a negligence on that part, because all the babies who leave the hospital, they are not screened for the hearing.
Hmm.
So and there is no awareness about it also, that that can be done. So many people still wait till the age of 5 or 6 years, if the child has not developed the hearing. So what do you say, that it's going to be a vicious cycle? Because 0 to 5 years is the best age to child to learn the language, and if you miss out that part of hearing, the auditory memory gets delayed, the child is not able to learn the language. Because of that, educational issues happens, because of that, social problems and employment issues takes place. And parents are not aware, even doing a delivery of the child, that that whether they should go for a child or not, because of consanguinity or genetic or hereditary histories. So this, the lack of awareness is which is going to make a raise into the increase into the hearing problems of the world. And apart, the second important issue is that, because of users of phone and the noise, music at the loud level in the youngsters, throughout the world, they are suspecting around billions of people, because listening to the music loud and listening for a longer time, they can have hearing problems. So these are the two major things which is going to create a big hearing loss issues throughout the world.
But how far is India to achieving that? Because if you look at the report itself, WHO says very clearly, and let's take this part by part. We'll first talk about children and then adults, because they say in children, almost 60% of hearing loss can be prevented through measures such as immunization. And like you clearly pointed out, there is no neonatal screening, with Kerala, for instance, being an exception. Has there been some sort of change there? Per se, and how far is India to sort of get there to ensure that universal newborn hearing screening is made mandatory?
It is not yet mandatory. Some of the states have started working on it, but still it is happening in some of the government hospital and some of the private hospitals. It has not become mandatory throughout the country. So that is a very one big issue. And you see that the people, the phones have reached to all the people, especially if you see in lockdown, the information has passed so fast about the coronavirus. I think the same way, if the fast information goes to all the people throughout the country, that how important is the neonatal screening, that the next thing should be done in the country.
So
So
basically, you're saying that screening is important, timely intervention is important. The biggest challenge right now is awareness. In that case, what happens when the diagnosis is made late? Uh, because you obviously said that early intervention is one important thing, and that's something that the WHO report also lists out.
yeah. So early intervention, if you see that there are pediatric protocols for all the countries. Almost in American Academy of Audiology, where I am an international member, around 80 countries have their own pediatric protocols. We don't have that pediatric protocols, and in that pediatric protocol, especially neonatal screening is very important, and that is there in all the 80 countries from the time 2000 onwards. So it's almost 20 years which we are behind in the neonatal screening. So it is very, very important for the government to start implementing, the neonatal screening throughout the through our country in all the hospitals, compulsory, which is not yet happened. There is no policy, there is no specific policy yet implemented through the from the central, which is very much important.
So apart from screening, what else needs to be done? Do you believe that allocation, for instance, is also less? Because there was a lot of hue and cry about this right after Budget 21-22, because the allocation for Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities has now been reduced to 1,171 crore rupees from 1,325 crore rupees. So that's a minus of 150 crore rupees. A lot of people said that is itself the fact that the budget has been reduced itself is sort of neglecting people with disabilities. Do you believe that allocation should also be increased?
Apart from allocation, right way of funding should be utilized. I mean, still, through the government, or maybe the enough information is not there that every individual who has a hearing loss should be given say either hearing aids or the cochlear implant to an individual's requirement.
Hmm.
So apart from neonatal screening, also those government organization who are running their own institute for the hearing impaired people, either a residential or the institute run by the private, especially when it comes to a government, there are standardization in the hearing aids. I mean, if you see a class of 350 children who have a hearing problem, every child having a different hearing cannot be given a hearing aid the same.
Hmm.
It has to be to individual's requirement. So lot of funding is going in that way, not utilized properly. And of course they are not getting a good input, so they are not getting a good output. So that allocation of funding may be a minimal, but that allocation of funding has to be gone in a right way, to a right person in a right manner.
Let's also talk about sign language for a moment, because it's one on one hand, well, where you say that screening is extremely important, timely intervention is important. What happens to children, for instance, when they're in schools, when they're growing up? How important is sign language? And there was a petition also from the community asking the government to make it an official language. Do you believe that needs to also be done?
As an individual and working in 30 years, and also as a, that I run my own Josh Foundation Trust, and my 30 years of practice, I have not seen anybody having no hearing. everybody has some hearing, say maybe 10%, 15%, 20%. So if say early screening happens, and if you get a hearing aid to an individual's requirement, and you give a proper rehabilitation, they can hear a language like us, they can speak like us, and they can be a self dependent, have a normal education and normal life, and can do like any other normal person. So I mean, of course, only hearing is not enough. Overall total communication is also involved, and especially people who can't afford the hearing aid or can't afford the cochlear implant, for them sign language is a second option. But I think, according to me as a professional, if you ask, I would not go for a sign language, because I feel that every child can be helped with the hearing aids or cochlear implants.
All right. So a couple of things that you've said in conclusion, if I could reiterate all of those things. One is that you said that universal newborn hearing screening is the most important, and that needs to be done because the WHO report says that at least 60% of the problems can actually be averted. Timely intervention is extremely important, especially in the first 2 years of a child's growth, and there is lack of awareness, so there needs to be more awareness. And allocation is all right, but also where it goes, where the funds are used, are extremely important. So this is what should be done to ensure that we're more inclusive. But this data that the WHO has put out has in fact warned, if all of this is not done, they've said that about 2.5 billion people, or 1 in 4 people, will be living with some degree of hearing loss by 2050, and that should worry all of us. Thank you so much for watching. Mr. Lal, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.